Thank you. Welcome everyone to the Finance and Administration Committee. It is Thursday, May 16th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. and I am calling this meeting to order. As we gather this morning, we acknowledge on behalf of this committee and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the First Nations. We thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history. We are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Has roll call been taken, please?
Through you, Chair, yes, roll call has been taken and we have quorum.
Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? I see none. At this time, I will ask for a mover and seconder for the adoption of the minutes of the meeting held on April 11th. The member from Killaloo, Haggerty and Richards, seconded by the member from North Algonquin Wilberforce. Were there any errors or omissions? I see none. All in favor? And that carries. We have no delegations this morning, so at this time, you'll have to excuse me, guys. I'm battling allergies and I'm really scratchy-throated now. I'll turn this over to Mr. Kelly with his administration report, and I will remind you that there was an addendum, and we're going to flip the addendum item up to number 9 and make the bylaw number 10. So Craig, take it away.
Thank you, Chair, and that was my preamble, so I appreciate you taking care of that piece of business. So my report begins on page 7. Item number 1 is on Queen's Park Advocacy Day, which is now scheduled for May 27th. Thank you to MPP John Yakubuski for arranging this. At this point, we have been in communication with Mr. Yakubuski, and the Warden has secured a number of key delegations with high-level cabinet ministers on that afternoon of that day. So what you're not seeing today is Santa's Little Helpers working in the background to finalize all the speakers' notes and the delegation notes that will be submitted to those ministers in their fullness. So we are still working on who and what and where in terms of the logistics of that day. But a note in the report, it's a bit of a different approach than we've done before and that the legislature has seen before, is that we are occupying the caucus room of Queen's Park and inviting those ministers or cabinet ministers to see us. As I understand it so far, we have about a half hour with each delegation before they head back to do their business of the day at the legislature. So it's a bit of a reverse AMO, as I referenced it in the committee package today, and I think should set the standard for how meetings could happen in the future at Queen's Park. So Mr. Yakubuski is excited, as are we. So it's been an exciting time getting this together. Item number 2 is a resolution from Hastings County for your consideration to support or otherwise. It's attached as Appendix 1. And this deals with rural municipalities. The context is that rural municipalities aren't seeing their fair share. And as noted by Hastings County, when a new deal was struck for Ottawa and Toronto for the uploading of some of their key roads, it relieved their infrastructure costs, while that has not yet been done for rural Ontario, at least especially rural Eastern Ontario. So again, that is there for your consideration. There is no recommendation or otherwise, but again, it's there for your discussion. Item number 3 is a bit of an update, of course. I do not have a Director of Corporate Services sitting in this team, as the Chair referenced. We have gone through a bit of a process so far, but this time we've just pushed pause while we assess the situation and assess the needs of the corporation moving forward. It was a really good exercise, and happy with all the candidates. We're just pausing for the moment. So in the meantime, I will be taking on that role as department head, and Mr. Burke and Mr. Belmore, Mr. Wren, and Ms. Wilton will report to me, and I'll take care of their requirements to report through to you. And I'm happy that they're here today actually to address their own report. So that's a really nice piece to add to this meeting. Item number 4, and thanks to Gwen Dabrowski, our clerk, for arranging this. This was the RCCTA, or the Renfrew County Clerks and Treasurers meeting, was held here last month. It was a really good time for your clerks and treasurers to meet on our site. And thanks to members of the senior leadership team who assisted in that day by providing a presentation to those clerks and treasurers. It was noted afterwards that many of them had never been in this building, and nor did they understand the breadth of what we do. So it was really an eye-opener for some. So again, thanks to Gwen for arranging that. An exciting moment in our future is item number 5, our agenda management system. Now, it's maybe not exciting for some of you because you already have it in your lower tier municipalities, but we have not. The County of Renfrew has moved towards a new software to handle our agendas and our minutes that will create large efficiencies, a huge amount of efficiencies moving forward as we assemble your packages in a timely fashion. So through a selection process, a request for quotation, Diligent Community came out on top. We referenced this last fall when we said we were searching out of the 2 or 3 that actually provide this service. Diligent Community did come out on top in terms of what they could provide to us. So a small team of clerks and administrative assistants are working on this as we move forward, and we hope to roll out we said soft launch in June, but we hope to roll out over the course of the next couple months. So we'll see how that goes. And item number 6, in terms of the information report, is my last one. That I think Greg has it in his report as well. That we are working on different training pieces, but we had clerks on call here. And again, thanks to Greg, Mr. Billmore, for arranging this. Clerks, and to Gwen, of course. Clerks on Call was here to work again with your clerks and your CAOs and others interested in working on parliamentary procedures and how to move forward in your municipality, making it there. So we're happy to work on these efforts in terms of a shared service and bring these opportunities to you as much as to us. So, Chair, those are my information items. Do you want me to stop there before we go to resolutions, I'm assuming? Okay.
Not having a great day here. I see the warden's hand up. Is that for number 1, Warden?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you. And again, we're really fortunate to have the efforts of John and his staff. Because this is new, there was, I think, some trepidation by members of the government to go forward with something like this. So and it was a lot of verbal communication and tweaking. So, thank you to John and his staff for the flexibility and the ability to explain it to the government. And also, kudos to Mr. Kelly and his staff, because there was a lot of, we need something right away in writing to try and float this, and they turned it out in 2 or 3 hours, volumes of information. So it's worked well. I think we've got, you're going to see the roster of ministers probably early next week. We'll be able to release that to you as soon as we know for sure. So it's exciting to do something new, and it's really important that we have the opportunity to present the 8 or 9 significant issues that we find that we know are important to our community. I should note that we submitted a list of about 13 to give Mr. Yakubuski some flexibility, and he was able to fill our day. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on 1? Just out of curiosity, will there be an opportunity to go to question period? Oh, you want me to ask the warden?
Well, the warden could answer that, because I know he's been in conversations with our MPP.
Brilliant. Warden, can you answer that?
Yes, I can. We're working on that. We're also working on a lunch in the parliamentary dining room, which will allow us again some opportunity to see various ministers and staff that we know in that environment. So we're trying to make a full day out of it and a valuable day.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, moving on to number 2, the resolution from Hastings, which I think is quite timely. Member from Edmundston Bromley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that, I don't know if this needs to be severed to be dealt with. I think this should actually be an action item. I would recommend that the County of Renfrew endorse, or that this committee recommend that council endorse the Hastings resolution.
That's where I was going, and I wasn't sure how Mr. Kelly wanted us to do it.
I would accept a motion right at the moment. If it doesn't, it's not severed now. It doesn't have to be severed to, unless you think it needs to be. But it can. No. In terms of a larger debate apart from the report. But I'm sensing that I'm reading the room a little bit. And I think I would. The motion could stand now.
All right, great. So I'll just ask for a mover and seconder to forward this to County Council for adoption.
With the recommendation that council endorse, yes.
Yes. Moved by the member from Aviston Bromley, second by the member from Killaloe, Haggerty, and Richards. Any discussion? Member from Aviston Bromley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is timely, as you have said. Committee may recall predicated, I think, on Councillor Doncaster's presentation on FCM, that there was an engagement with respect to the housing has become is using up a lot of oxygen in the room, and infrastructure in order to facilitate housing development is largely beginning to press in on infrastructure funding. And I think it's imperative that it be kept in mind that we've been talking about this for ages. I can't remember when the local share initiative came out of AMO, and I'm certainly stand to be corrected, but at that time I think it was suggested that municipalities are collecting 9 cents out of every dollar of tax revenue across the country, and yet I think we're responsible for something on the order of 60% of infrastructure. And that has been a structural issue for years and years, and has not disappeared because we find ourselves in a particular challenge with respect to housing. So it is certainly timely, and we must impress upon both the federal and provincial government that long-standing structural infrastructure gap remains.
Stop stealing things out of my brain, because that's exactly the road I was going down, was Councillor Doncaster's report. And then the warden also gave us some numbers for infrastructure around housing for Eastern Ontario that I thought was very, very, very important. And when I was reading this report, I had CP24 on and watching the disaster that is the Gardiner Expressway in Toronto, and thinking, boy, the city's taking the heat for it not going very quickly, but they're not funding it anymore. So I think, why the DVP in the Gardiner and not, Highway 512? I was waiting for a reaction from Lee, which I didn't get. All right, member from North Algonquin Wilberforce, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly do support this motion as well. In addition to what my colleagues have already spoke to, is also the OCIF and the funding that really hasn't changed, and in some of our municipalities has decreased in the last number of years. So once again, as inflation and all the other costs go up, we're not seeing any additional funding coming our way as far as addressing some of those challenges.
Agreed and well said. Warden?
Thank you. And I think a couple layers here. That's very important. And the member from Aviston Bromley mentioned the share campaign of 2008 and the billions of dollars that we as municipalities in Ontario use to fund infrastructure. The other issue that's of importance is that I'm hearing increasingly from other heads of council and for counties and for municipalities that they're being told to use their HPP money to invest in the new housing to meet the 1.5 million homes that are needed across Ontario. The issue remains that HPP money is often used for immediate needs of clients. So that could result in a reduction of support for everyday clients and operations. So I think that's a piece that needs to be folded into this. And again, this all folds into the larger debate where AMO and numerous municipalities have sent resolutions forward supporting AMO. They're saying, look, we need to sit down and review the relationship between the provincial government and the municipalities around services provided as well as funding. So, I think any one of these motions that comes forward, I think we have to take a close look at them and support them. And I fully support this. Thank you.
Thank you. I have not given up on the local share. Every time I see Minister Bethlen Falvey, I do put a bug in his ear, and he tells me to leave him alone. He was worried at the latest Roma conference that I was going to ask again, but I wasn't at the mic, and he was sure I was out there somewhere lurking in the shadows. The member from Amherst Bromley, please.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair, and just predicated on Councillor Brose's comments. And I speak to the 19 municipalities, the 17 lower tier, and the county as a municipality, and the separated city of Pembroke. Some of them, I believe, with their OMP funding, may be seeing increases, but it's probably barely keeping pace with inflation, because in fact, the $500 million has been frozen for quite some time. So even if your grant has stayed the same, you are losing ground. A dollar is not spending what a dollar was 4 years ago. Furthermore, on the OSIF funding, once again, of the 19 municipalities in the geographic Renfrew County, 4 saw an increase to OSIF funding, and 15 saw a decrease to their OSIF funding. So I just wanted to put a kind of a finer point on what we are seeing. And my concern is that the acute infrastructure needs that we have been facing for the last year and a half to 2 years begin to elbow out the chronic infrastructure issues that we have been dealing with for over 10 years. Thank you.
Well said. Anything further? Now I've forgotten. Did I call for the vote? I did not. Okay. All in favor? Excellent. That will go to County Council. I'm sure that there'll be further discussion when we get there. Number 3, the recruitment update. Member from Amherst Bromley, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wonder if, perhaps through you to Mr. Kelly, if you could tease this out a little bit. So this entire initiative was predicated upon a recommendation coming out of the strategic review undertaken by Stratcorp, and taking advantage of the vacancy that exists now in corporate services. So I'm not prepared at all to be second guessing the decision, but what is anticipated or contemplated as the additional assessment? Because it seemed pretty comprehensive at the time that we made the decision to post for this recruitment.
Oh, gee, thanks, Chair. Yeah, so the additional assessment is that we've reformatted the, we've changed corporate services around, that the treasurer, and you'll recall during the budget piece and other business cases that were made earlier this year, is that the manager of finance is now the treasurer. So that treasurer piece has been teased out of corporate services, and there are strategic, I think we talked about this back in January, February, when we made that change, is looking for the pieces in the corporation that need to be filled in terms of the gaps of a strategic person or initiatives and how that rolls out. Not to say the candidates that were engaged weren't strategic at all. They all were. It's just a matter of the emphasis on finance versus strategy going forward. And that's why we've just paused while we let the corporate change, the changes in the corporate structure right now, the manager of finance and the manager of human resources, who have been reporting to a director for a bit. They all have really, and the other two managers notwithstanding, have a lot of good strategic initiatives, and I'm hopeful, as the committee is hopeful, that they spread their wings and bring those forward and see how things grow, and then really determine after a few months to see what the actual needs are without a director of corporate services in place.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you through you, Mr. Kelly. So the position of council, there actually has been direction on our org chart towards creating this position and towards filling this position. At this point, this is a pause. So I'm presuming that after that pause, if the recommendation is something other than what is the standing direction from council, there will be a more fulsome report coming forward through this committee and ultimately to council, because right now the static position is that we establish this role in the org chart and that we recruit for it, correct?
Go ahead, Craig.
Through you, Chair, absolutely. Absolutely, you are correct.
Warden, did you have your hand up, or was that an old hand?
New one, sorry. I just wanted to double down on what Mr. Kelly was saying. Part of it was, I think, an opportunity to let things settle a bit, because in the past, I think we all recognize the conflict of the treasurer being the director of corporate services. The conflict being that the treasurer has a statutory duty, which is, it performs somewhat of the role of critic of things that come forward. Whereas the manager of corporate or director of corporate services had a responsibility for providing a service. And sometimes, we felt there was if not a direct conflict between those two roles, at least an intellectual conflict. And so now with the separation of duties, I'm going to speak for myself. I felt it was necessary, with Mr. Kelly's agreement that he could handle the task, to let it settle a little bit, because we may end up tweaking that director's position a bit, or doing something different. It gives us a chance to take a breath, look around, take some of the great ideas that we received, frankly, during the interviews, and maybe start to implement them.
Thank you. Member from Edmundston Bromley, please.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the warden as well. That did illuminate a little bit more, because in the discussion and decision that council had made prior, certainly the workload and the expectation of the CAO was part of that consideration too, of offloading. And I recognize that in divesting the CAO in our current structure and divesting the CAO of the clerk duties, that will have somewhat lightened the load on the CAO. And I know that the participation that the County of Renfrew is now providing the chair of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus means, of course, the director level senior staff here at the County of Renfrew also perform a role for the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. Now that is a temporary, I'm presuming, Warden Emo, that may not be a continuing thing. But that was part of the discussion, however many months ago that was, when we made this decision, that the CAO really is a strategic position in driving this municipal corporation. So I recognize this, but I still would need to remain convinced that this is not the path forward, and I anticipate that that's what this further assessment will provide.
Yeah, and I want to weigh in here because I was part of the panel. I think there was a lot of discussion. This was not sort of a knee-jerk decision at the end of interviews. It was very well sussed out. Craig has agreed to do what he's doing, and we really felt that we have the right people in the right places right now. I mean, look at my team. Look how happy they are. They're a good team. So, Craig, I'm not sure that your load feels lighter, but fingers crossed for the future. Yeah. All right, is there anything further on 3? Then we'll move on to 4, the Clerks and Treasurers Association meeting. Member from North Laguna Wilberforce, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Mr. Kelly and, of course, Gwen as well. Thank you so much for organizing and putting this on. As much as we realize that those of us at City County Council, that county is certainly available and supportive of the lower tiers, sometimes the staff in the lower tiers are reluctant to reach out. So having the county take the lead on this, I think, is really important. I'd like to see it continue. I know the staff at our municipality are slowly getting more comfortable with more collaboration and reaching out. So I do really appreciate this initiative and the leadership and training that's being provided.
Thank you for that. And I'm really excited that they're going to have the opportunity to see the butterfly model at the manor. I think that's a very important thing for everybody to see. So I'm really excited to hear feedback on that in the fall. Thank you. Anything further? Number 5, the agenda management system. And number 6, clerks on call. Fabulous. We will move on to resolutions. Number 7, please, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. And item number 7 is to deal with the AMO, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, or the AMO Board of Directors. And if I may, the recommendation is that the Finance and Administration Committee recommend to County Council that the Corporation of the County of Renfrew nominates County Councillor Peter Emo for the position of Rural Caucus Director on the AMO Board of Directors, with the added responsibility of serving on the Roma Board of Directors for the 2024 to 2026 term.
Thank you. I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. Moved by the member from North Elgin Wilberforce, seconded by the member from Laurentian Hills. Discussion.
Background at all?
What?
Do you want me to give background at all, or do you think they've
I
read
thought it was pretty self-explanatory,
Fair
but
enough.
go ahead.
No, if it's, no,
I thought it was.
okay.
I like having the backup on the Roma board, too. It's fantastic having 2 of us there. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Number 8, please.
Number 8, again, to deal with AMO, and many of you as committee chairs have heard this several times, but the recommendation from this committee is that the Finance and Administration Committee recommend to County Council that after a review of the current state of corporate services, staff submit delegation requests at the upcoming Association of Municipalities of Ontario, or AMO conference, that are consistent with the 2023 to 2026 County of Renfrew strategic plan, current initiatives, and that require further advocacy, and previous delegations that addressed funding shortfalls.
Thank you. I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. Moved by the member from Killaloe, Haggerty and Richards, seconded by the member from North Elgin Wilberforce. You see the background there. We don't have a detailed list now, so.
We don't, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, so what
ahead.
I've suggested in other committees is that based upon what we hear and what we learn on May 27th, this list may change or be beefed up or eliminate it all entirely. But we'll determine that, I think, after the 27th, and we have until June the 4th to submit those delegations. Of course, items of advocacy continued regardless of what happens on the 27th, but we will learn more and add to that.
Member from Abbaston Bromley, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just, of course, I would be astonished if the delegation to Queen's Park does not refine and arrive at an appropriate listing. As a couple of placeholders, I had spoken earlier about OSIF and the new funding model that OSIF has rolled out. I think that's a challenge. Likewise, an ongoing challenge. I'm wondering, are we ever going to have current value assessment again? I'm questioning, like, if we're not going to have current value assessment, I recognize that there are some commercial activities that MPAC is providing data for, but in the absence of us having 4-year CVA every 4 years, I question why that entity still exists.
I could not have said that better myself, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's I couldn't agree with you more. It was so frustrating when they rolled out that letter that said, no, they're not going to do it in this calendar year. And then you realize, and in that letter was also the notion that they were going to revamp how they did CVA. And we haven't heard anything since then. And I question if they're not doing it this year, and then we're rolling into 2025, going into an election year in 2026, are we now looking at 2027? And that's concerning. Go ahead.
And it's important, I think, to clarify as well. MPAC has consistently been advising the municipal sector that they are lined up in the blocks, waiting for the starter's pistol, and these are ready to go. So the decision does not seem to be MPAC's, and that is why I'm suggesting, at the very least as a placeholder, to Mr. Kelly, that a question surrounding current value assessment and that regime that is integral to property taxation and equitable and appropriate and fairness in property taxation is a pretty critical issue right now.
I feel like there's a lot of this going on. So that's a very interesting question that I think would fall under Minister Calandra, but with some backup from Minister Bethlen-Falvey.
Duly noted. Well, and Ministry of Infrastructure as well, because of with OSIF to Councillor
Right.
Donohue's previous point. Yep. So those have been noted for sure.
And is there still a reluctance to have multi-ministerial meetings?
At AMO, yes.
Okay. That's a shame, because having those ministers that are key to these issues in the room all at once, hearing the same thing, at the same time, I think there's large benefit to that. So, all right, anything further on this item? All in favor? And so now we're moving up the addendum item.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm just making a note. So item number 9, or the new item number 9, is a resolution to deal with the market analysis for the County of Renfrew non-union employees. And the recommendation that's put before you today is that the Finance and Administration Committee recommend to County Council that the Gallagher Benefit Services Canada Group, Inc. be engaged to provide a complete market analysis for the County of Renfrew non-union employees.
Thank you. I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. Moved by, I'm just going to start picking people. Moved by the member from North Elgin Wilberforce, seconded by the member from Killaloe, Haggerty, and Richards, and some background, please.
Thank you, Chair. And again, in the report, I've referenced that the last time the Gallagher report was done was in late 2021 and 2022, early in 22, when Council received a report on the final changes that could be instituted. At that time, you recall, or you may recall, the conversation, whether you were on Council or you recall the conversation in the minutes or otherwise, that Council chose the 55th percentile and to weave those into the budget, and that decision was made mid-year. There's also a decision at the time to do a 5-year review, and of course the motion speaks to that we shall not do another review for 5 years. However, what we're noticing in terms of recruitment, retention, and our comparators in the market, that we are being once again eclipsed by local municipalities, CNL, from the school board and otherwise. So we are looking for an interim report to see if we are keeping pace. This council has taken great measures, and thank you to you for some retention and recruitment measures. Of course, our CPI adjustment this year was very generous, and we all thank you. However, we just want to engage Gallagher on an interim report that will be delivered to you in time for budget consideration, and that's this fall when we start talking about budget in October. For your consideration, whether or not it gets rolled into it or not, that will be again up to you. But we would just like to have that comparison done amongst our local peers, our Eastern Ontario peers, and our other sectors that were not included in the original comparative list. Thank you.
Discussion. Member from Amherst Bromley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not in support of this. I certainly would be in support of amending the review period. Any of the reviews that are done at a municipal level, I always question why they're 5 years. At some point, there's going to be a council that will not review it. It seems to me that any review period should be consistent with the term of council, so I wouldn't be opposed to changing that. My concern with this is that we did lay out and we made substantive change. Quite a number of the councillors in the room were not present when we did that. Well, 2, that's a number. My concern here is that on what we are witnessing in terms of the competition for staff is who's deciding the table stakes. Like, are we now trailing these because all of these local entities have had to respond to what the County of Renfrew did 2 years ago? And is this satisfying our recruitment issues, or is it going to retain the same recruitment issues, but it's going to continue to drive wages to a higher level? I know that when we were discussing previous challenges, the councillor that sat at this table advised the then council of all of the measures that their community had put into place for recruitment, that was going to satisfy, that was going to solve their issue. And my response to that is, it's not solving your issue at all, because now I just have to meet the table stakes that you've set here, or else all of my staff from Admaston Brumley are going to go to your community. So all of our challenges have remained, but we're now having a higher baseline that we're talking about. And that's my concern here. We did recognize the need for a review, but I would be much more predisposed, because I will guarantee you, if this recommends a change, all of those other entities that are listed here, the comparators that we used before and the comparators that we didn't use before, I will guarantee you they will be doing the same thing again once we raise the ante. So I am not in support of this at this point, though I would certainly be in support of if this does not succeed, of amending the review period from 5 years to 4 years.
I'm not sure if that's. I need to ponder that notion. Before I move to Mr. Kelly with a response, the member from Killougherdine, Richards, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I definitely think that the landscape has changed, and to do a review every 5 years, I think may have been good at the time, but I think the market that we're in right now for recruitment, as a group, I think we need to look at, we're here for a term of 4 years, and during that period of 4 years, things change so rapidly, and as we've seen, and our costs for wages have increased, but in reality, I don't think we're in the market. We're behind. So maybe agreeing with the councillor from Admaston Bromley, I think the time frame should definitely be changed, and maybe even to the point of out of a 4-year term, every second year we revisit this and to see if we are in the marketplace. You know, if there is a change, that's fine. If there's not, at least we've looked at it and we're able to, you know, make that decision at the time. Thank you.
The member from North Algona-Wilberforce, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do support my colleague from Admaston Brumley in the sense that I think we should look at changing the time frame from 5 years to 4. I agree that it should follow the same term as council. I'm not sure I agree with doing a review every 2 years. Again, that adds costs and so on. So I am in favor of changing the time frame. I do support my colleague from Admaston Brumley that I'm not in favor of doing one right now.
Okay, yeah, and my comment was going to be there to Councillor Mayville is that there is an inherent cost, and so every 2 years could become a bit onerous, but Mr. Kelly, do you want to respond?
Yeah. So I just want to clarify points. I'm not sure if this was the intent or not. On the comment that there was a wholesale change to the grid, if you will, in 22. Well, yeah, 22 is when it was changed. 21 was when the work was done. and started at least anyways. That is inherently not true. There were several positions that saw significant change, and some less significant. There was not the result of everybody getting a change in the grid. There was, I think, some of the planning positions, I think some of the commander positions. Help me out, Greg. There was a few key positions that were changed and modified based on the thing, but there wasn't a wholesale, everybody gets a new car type Oprah Winfrey scenario, not to be flippant, but that was not the case. Where we are seeing greater competition is on those positions that were not recognized. And I won't say the lower positions, because they're absolutely not lower positions, but somewhere below the manager, well, between the manager and below positions are seeing a definite recognition in the private and other public market of being paid more. So recruiting there is becoming very difficult, and that was the hope of the comparators. But it's hard to say to the Gallagher group, can you go out and assess group 3s and 5s and 6s? You know, so you have to do it almost whole scale, because everybody affects something else, and then it becomes compression issues and pay equity issues. That's why it has to be done in terms of that. I'll note, by the time this would roll out, we would be 3 years into this, right, by 2025. And that's why it's an interim type deal. They were using 2021 figures when this assessment was done. Although it was launched in 2022, they were using 2021 figures, so we're already in 2024. So we're 3 years into a possible renewal. I'll leave it there for comments.
I don't disagree with you that it would be difficult to say, just do the rank and file, don't worry about these. I mean, you kind of have to do it corporation-wide. And I do recognize what you're saying about private sector, and I think we're seeing that more and more and more. I'm still pondering over here, but the member from Killu, Haggerty and Richards.
Thank you, Chair. Just to further my point, so basically this was done in 2021, and now we're just a little over 2 years into the report, and now we have major concerns already. And does anyone not feel in the future we're going to have these same concerns, and it's probably even going to get worser? You know, so it's reality, and it may cost, but it may save us going out to recruit. We may be able to retain our employees for a longer period, as now, you know, we're having a difficult time keeping up with the marketplace. Thank you.
And there is a huge cost to recruitment.
If I can just add to that, and so we're taking a stance by saying that we're not competitive. This may, and I'm hopeful, reaffirm that several of our positions are competitive with the market, right? There may or may not be some small tweaks to it, but this will again reaffirm to both to our employees and to the greater market that we are competitive indeed. And with all the package that we have to offer, that the County of Renfrew is a choice employee, and this will reaffirm that. So we jump to the negative, saying that everything's going to go up. Well, that may not be the case whatsoever. There might be some small tweaks, as we saw last time.
I think, though, that the point that the member from Amherst Bromley was making was, and I'll use my municipality as the example, we actually budgeted for our collective bargaining with our roads crew, which just happened. We budgeted for it, obviously, into this year, knowing that we had already lost some of our public works to the County of Renfrew. Thanks for that, Lee, because it is more competitive, the benefits and the pay and the hours. So I think I'm kind of on board with what you're saying. Like, it's almost, but I understand what the member from Amherst Bromley is saying. Sorry, that are we creating a scale now where now the local tiers are keeping up with the Joneses? And I think that therein lies the county councillor's concerns around any pay increase here, because it leaves us in a bit of a budgetary pressure situation each year that we know, that a union has increased 2.5% or a non-union has increased. So I after pondering and then pondering some more, I do understand where we're going with this. But I also now see where Councillor Mayville is saying, that 2 year or 3 years, it might be a sweet spot, but we still, as local mayors or reeves, have to keep our eye on it for our own municipalities. So we're in it doubly. Go ahead.
Whether that deserves a response or not, but I'll provide it anyways. Chair, is equally, and my job is to protect, of course, the staff of the County of Renfrew, and we could equally say the same, is that the lower tiers are now outbidding County of Renfrew staff in terms of positions. There are municipalities that are paying similar positions, significant more, and we're seeing our staff apply and work towards those jobs now at the lower tier. And we see it amongst your own lower tier municipalities bidding against each other all the time. So it's an unfortunate situation that we're all in. Listen, if we could all be on one single grid and we all pay the same, that would be beneficial to us all, wouldn't it be? But unfortunately, that's not the position we're in.
That would be a utopian grid. And I think I'll be right with you. I think that one of the problems is that we're just playing musical chairs amongst the local tier, and I wasn't aware that some positions were being paid the same as the county, but we're playing musical chairs with employees amongst the locals, and eventually there are going to be a whole bunch of chairs and no people to fill them. So, member from Amherst Bromley, then the warden, and then the member from Killu, Haggerty and Richards, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some time ago, I saw what I thought was a very pithy comment, I think it was on Twitter, that if you find yourself late for some event and you text the person that you were to meet and you say, I'm stuck in traffic, you are not. You are traffic. The market for staff is not there and we're looking at it, we are it. And even in Mr. Kelly's secondary comment, if in fact there are municipalities that now have more attractive compensation than the county does, I can't imagine that if we change ours to match theirs, they will say, oh, that has been unsuccessful, we will have to try something different. I will guarantee you it will continue. And this is a spiral. I don't diminish in any way that it's happening, but this is not the solution for us to be doing this. Also to clarify, I was not suggesting that every single one of, let us say again, 850, 900 employees at the County of Renfrew, it was not to say that each one of them received an increase. I think largely, I shouldn't even say largely. I know that there were some substantial planning was a particular pressure point, but we did within Public Works and the paramedic service, there have always been those that are familiar with their grids. There has always been an hourly rate and a wage. And we had always weighted heretofore for non-union staff the salary. That year we weighted the wage so that those who were working the 2,080, is that it? Yeah, 2,080 rather than the 1,720. That unto itself, I think, was about a 16% pay increase. What I will say with respect to corporate-wide, to enterprise-wide, was in the Gallagher report that we received 26 months ago, our place was analyzed as we were in the 50th percentile of our comparators. And we did make the decision to move to be 55th percentile, and that, even if it didn't affect every individual employee of the County of Renfrew, it no question changed the whole dynamic of where we were headed with our comparators. So ultimately, I am certainly sympathetic. We, and Mr. Kelly has a particular role as the CAO of this municipal corporation, to protect this municipal corporation. We, that sit in this room, and when it is filled, have a larger obligation than Mr. Kelly does. Mr. Kelly does not have an obligation to the larger county and our municipalities, but we do. So I know that if we're talking about positions that exist within my municipality, we had a very substantial levy increase in 2024. And I shudder at what we may be looking at. And the challenge is we cannot push away from this particular poker table. We must remain seated at the poker table. And if the ante is increasing, there is no hope for us but to reach into our pocket and meet that ante. The final thing, and in responding to Councillor Mayville's suggestion, of particular note, I think it is timely, this afternoon, we are going to set our long-term financial plan. We have deviated from our long-term financial plan on several occasions, perhaps the last 4 years, but we haven't changed our long-term financial plan for 10 years. It was adopted in April of 2015, and we're going to change it in 2024. That's 9 years. And I think that the conversation you will find very challenging this afternoon. So I am not persuaded that we need to move on a 2-year basis. We certainly have to be aware of the situation, but ultimately that is my final word on this, Madam Chair.
Warden. Warden? Oh, there he is.
Yeah, sorry. I understand, and I've listened, and I recognize the concerns about the trickle-down effect of setting the market, and it seems we only set the market for 15 minutes. And I think going forward with this, the idea of it being renewed in a term is a good idea, and I think it should be even more specific in terms of being reviewed, the first year of the term. Because that then allows some decision making for the remainder of the term of a council. I suspect that we individually, when we return to our home councils, are going to have to, as will we in these chambers, have to be more disciplined in terms of trying to ensure the market, while competitive, doesn't become a market of over competition. And that's a lot of meandering to say that, but I think we are the ones that drive it. We drive the market by liking a candidate and bending our rules or using the rules to offer more attractive packages. And I think this is going to be painful for a few years until we fully embrace a larger vision of shared services. And I think the only way we're going to be able to semi-accurately predict costs is to have surveys like this completed periodically. I don't see anything in this that says the survey will be confidential, so I'm assuming that it will come to open council when it's completed, and with that it ends up being shared to the lower tier. So I'm hoping that will influence some form of discipline, but I think we all have to exert more discipline when we're hiring. Having said that, I'm as guilty as anybody else. I'm not pointing fingers, and maybe even more guilty. But I would encourage us to go ahead with this.
Thank you, Warden. Member from Killaloe, Hegarty and Richards.
Thank you, Chair. Just my last comment before this afternoon is that, we hear that the concern from Craig in regards to this matter, and they have hundreds of employees. We, as a small, lower tier municipality, we have, let's say, between 5 and 15 employees that could be affected, roughly. If we lose 1 or 2, which, like our municipality has lost 2 employees this year because of the increase, they can get more money elsewhere, that's devastating. Like, where do you find people to replace those 2 people in a smaller community? Like, it really hits home. That's my last comment on this subject.
You're getting them from other municipalities, apparently. I mean, that's what's going on. It's astounding to me when I hear that, so-and-so who is the person in this municipality is now the person in this municipality for various reasons, whether they've moved or whatever. But honestly, that's the first time I've ever heard that the locals were keeping up with the county of Renfrew. And I assure you it's not Bonnechere Valley. So laugh it up over there. And I got the look from Anne as well. We were both just shocked that this was going on. So yeah, you both said that you were done, but now you're, go ahead, member from Houston Bromley. They both have their hands up.
I don't know if we're going to the vote. I want to request a recorded vote, Madam Chair.
Absolutely, we can do that. Are you guys playing rock, paper, scissors to see who's going to do it?
Councillor Brose?
Oh, Michael goes first because he asked for it.
Okay, sorry. Councillor Donahue?
I am always asking for it in one sort or another, Ms. Dombrowski. I am opposed.
Councillor Brose?
I am opposed.
Warden Emo?
I'm in favor.
Councillor Giardini?
Opposed.
Councillor Mayville?
In favor?
And Chair Murphy?
I'm in favor.
It's a tie vote. So the motion is defeated.
And the motion is defeated. This is what happens when I don't have all the members to vote. I forgot that Jason wasn't staff. I was going to wonder where his vote went. All right, that motion's defeated. Thank you. And now we will move on to bylaws, which is number 9, but as the new number 10. And I'll get you to read the recommendation. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about this.
Thank you, Chair. So item number 9 is delegated authority policy bylaw for your consideration. And the recommendation today is that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council that the delegation of authority bylaw be approved.
May I have a mover and seconder to get it on the floor, please? Moved by the member from North Elgin-Wilberforce, seconded by the member from Amherst Bromley. Now we can go into some background, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. So over the years, we have considered many things, and we have delegated certain authorities broadly to department heads and or the warden or otherwise, and throughout periods of the summer through legislative periods during elections and lame duck periods. Thank you. And we don't have one main source for those as well. So that's the impetus for part of this bylaw, is to have everything in one area that could be a resource to staff and for council to look at to see who said what and how, what authority do you have to do this. Part of the authority, delegation of authority bylaw is also to introduce a number of new items that staff is considering will move along issues faster, to cut the red tape, if you will, or help things along that council has already approved in notion or by project or by motion to get things rolling. I'll use an example of maybe even public works tendering. So quite often, and those that sit on Public Works or the Operations Committee will note that we will run through a series of tenders and approve those and the contracts therein for items that have been budgeted for, that have fallen under or at budget, and approve. Not to say what we're doing is wrong at all, but what we're doing is a slowing down of the process by up to 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes 2 months. By the time the tender is released, by the time it goes to committee, by the time it goes to council, it's causing a bit of a delay. So what we're suggesting in those instances is moving those items into a delegated authority bylaw, again, where they have been largely approved by budget or by recommendation or otherwise mentioned through council and committee, that they just flow through the proper process. You know, if there is any inconsistencies with any of these issues, or we can read the horizon where there are issues or in opposition, then of course they would come back for council and committee for discussion and fullness of recommendation and contracts. So in essence, we're trying to move the ball faster and trying to move these things along quicker through the process. We're not trying to hide things under the rug, if you will. Not that that's been suggested whatsoever, but we're just trying to move things along that we consider, and it's noted in the bylaw, minor in nature. I know all these things are going to be discussed in the fullness of the discussion today, but again, under our allowed delegation of authorities under the Municipal Act, these things would be considered minor because council has discussed them and or recommended them in terms of a report or otherwise. These are execution items, again, to move the ball faster. I think I'll leave it there because I know there's going to be a lot of discussion, Chair.
Thank you, and I think that there will be discussion around the word minor. I sort of feel like it's like the word affordable in affordable housing. What is affordable to you might not be affordable to somebody else, and I feel like minor is the sort of the under the same umbrella as that. I will open it up. Who wants to start? Member from North Algona Wilberforce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly do understand and can appreciate, especially when it comes to operations, items that have been approved by the budget, the tenders come in within budget, that delegated authority could move those projects ahead, provided, and I think it's very, very important, that any of those decisions come back to County Council as information item in the report. Certainly don't want to lose track of having that feedback and that information.
Thank you. Member from Aviston Bromley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have one or two items. I did provide both to yourself as chair and to Mr. Kelly the comments that I wanted to, and I don't know that I necessarily need to belabor all of them, because there were a few, I will refer to them, I think, as more clerical. Even in the preamble with respect to citation of what a department head might mean, I think there was some error in that. I think that there was some error, minor. I think there might have been 3 or 4 places, and comprehensive documents, which is these, I think 17.1 was the last stage, but I'm not precisely sure how many different delegations there are. So I preface this, and I think that Mr. Kelly did address this in the background, but for clarity, for my clarity at the very least. So is the intent that these are going to be standing delegations, that council will now be divesting themselves of the discretion on any of the items that are listed here? Or is this just a roadmap of the elements that are delegatable, if there is such a word, that would be kind of the standing manual that would be accessed if a delegated authority was being sought?
Through you, Chair. There are, it's a bit of both, all right, to be as clear as possible. There are several that, in fact, you would be now delegating authority away from council to do, and I could point to several, and sometimes it's around the wording. So let me put it this way. Council receives, let's use a fake example that could be real. Council receives a report from Development and Property that they were applying for the Rural Economic Development Grant. The grant is received to say, and the report comes back to council, hey council, we're receiving $50,000 towards an economic development program. The report suggests we've received a letter from the ministry. The ministry says you're getting the money. The agreement's coming back at a future time. Okay. Committee and council suggest we're accepting of the $50,000 and we agree with the concept of it. Go forth and conquer. The agreement comes back 4 days later. We don't have a council meeting for 6 months or 6 weeks between committee and council.
because you have recommended that you're okay with that project, the warden and the CAO or the clerk for the bylaw intention now have the authority to sign that and bind the corporation, because you have agreed in principle, if you will, with that it just coming back to you with the agreement is just a mechanical item to get to that point before we get the funds. And it's a mechanical piece, right? Another example where you're suggesting full autonomy to staff. RFPs RFPs are a bad example. RFPs would come back because RFPs. Let's talk about that. Talk about procurement. Difference between a tender and an RFP. And the procurement bylaw, I think, is coming back anyways in another month or two anyway. A tender, and Mr. Perkins and Mr. Hanrath typically run tenders. Tenders are very specific. They're designed. We want you to deliver us a pencil that's an HD5 pencil and to this length and this amount, whatever it happens to be. Everybody bids on that exact tender for the exact same requirements and provides the pricing. There is no discrepancy between them all. They've all provided that. And what we're suggesting in those instances is that apples to apples, you will delegate the authority for us to then approve that ABC Contracting wins that award because they are the lowest bidder. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts to it. We have seen lawsuits otherwise across the province where people have chosen the lowest tender, and they lose because they have not picked it. Because apples to apples, you almost shall pick the lowest tender. RFPs are a little bit different, where you're considering maybe asphalt versus gravel or something on a road, but that's a little bit different. So what we're suggesting is you delegate that authority away from having that to again get that road done faster and quicker into the hopper, because it could be 6, 7, 8 weeks, could be 3 weeks, could be 2 weeks. Councillor Donahue, the question is, it can be both, right? There are instances where it's one and instances where it's another. I think we've tried to identify. And if we haven't, erroneously, we could amend that. I think the original policy that we have is that where there are clerical errors, we have the right to amend as we find things that are wrong. I think you noted a few in your report, or in your notes to me, is that there were a few bylaws that one repealed the other, and that one is now disposed of. We have tried to note in one of the columns that here's the process. You're going to delegate this authority. Why you're going to delegate that, because it's fitting with the procurement policy or otherwise, and we're going to come back to committee and council with a report, and here's what we've done. And that's integral to this, is that we will be reporting back on all items of delegated authority. I think that's a given, but there are some items that just don't seem to rise to the occasion of coming back to you. I'm sorry for taking the time.
No. You know what? I really appreciate your answer with the red grant, because that's no different than what we do at our local tier, where we say, well, if we get the grant, this is what we're doing with it. If we don't get the grant, then there's no decision to be made. So then it's left in our very capable staff's hand. I really like that example. Warden, I do see you, but the member from Amherst Bromley has a follow-up. I will get right to you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is important that all of council engage on this, and I don't think it is a good use of this committee's time to do this now and quite conceivably at the end of the month again. And I think that there is a lot of benefit for this fully engaged discussion to happen then. So I'm going to adhere or approve the recommendation here that this gets advanced, with the proviso that I'm not necessarily in favor of all of these by that, but I think it is important to engage then. Just as the final comments, one question and a final comment as it pertains now, just with reporting. Reporting has always been a thing for me. And you will just note in the comments that I sent to Mr. Kelly, Madam Chair, and to yourself, just on the reporting, when it says as required, it's kind of like the chair had suggested earlier, as define what that means required. And my suggestion is as exercised. Every time a delegated authority is exercised, a report is generated, rather than as required and who determines the requirement, just as suggestion. The final question then for today that I have, actually one more comment, just on some of the financial things. I was suggesting that perhaps it could be simply consistent with the procurement policy, i.e. the various spending levels, whether it be council, standing committee, CAO, or director, that those might be consistent with some of these ones where we are seeking opportunity to have revenue generating, and $250,000, I think it was maybe 2.1, 2.2, 4.1, 4.2, 5.1, 5.2. But then finally, for today, 5.2, the delegated authority, the authority to execute an agreement with the federal or provincial government, a municipality, agency, institution, utility, or community partner, etc. So I do wonder, does that include Mr. Blackmore's MSA and LSA? And I presume perhaps Chair Giardini, Ms. Patrick, perhaps there are similar agreements to LSAs and MSAs that exist in community services as well. And it seems to me that that's written broadly enough that it could be interpreted that even those multi-sector accountability agreements would be delegated.
Through you, Chair, that is the intent. That is the intent to include those, and that's why it was left broadly. Ms. Patrick and Mr. Blackmore often have agreements that come through that are significant to the corporation, of course, because they help us through, but they are insignificant financially. They are just a matter of moving the ball forward on several agreements. So again, when those authorities are delegated and a report is required, or an agreement is required to be written in terms of timing, thou shalt return this report within 14 days, standard language from the province or the feds. That those could be done and a report come back if it doesn't change the significance to the corporation that puts us in a position that wasn't agreed to already.
But I also think that Councillor Donohue's assertion that it should be as a report as exercised definitely goes back to what the member from North Algonquin-Wilberforce was saying, where we should have a report on every time this is used. I'm going to go to the warden. Because all right, you get one more follow-up, but the man's head is, look, his hand's going to go down soon.
I think he probably has as much patience as I. With respect to these agreements, and even the example that Mr. Kelly had cited earlier with a red grant, I think there is opportunity there, and I'm as it pertains to the MSAs, notwithstanding that the provinces, the Municipal Act provides that we must have notice, etc., and when we meet, our procedural bylaw gives us all of this authority, then they seem oblivious to the fact of how we actually govern in this strange dichotomy that. However, I think that also could be formed as part of the resolution, that in the example that Mr. Kelly cited of red, if we have made this application, and in fact we have been given informal notice that our application is complete, the resolution could simply say, and that the warden and clerk, or warden and CAO as appropriate, shall execute the documents. Rather than granting a standing delegation, simply the resolution of these. And Mr. Kelly, in fact, alluded to that even in his most recent comment when he said that if there is no substantive change from what was expected, then council can actually be suggesting that in the interregnum between our council meetings, should this come forward, I think actually the MSA might have been delayed this year. There might have been an extension given to that. But if it is not substantively different from our previous agreements, that the warden and CAO be authorized to execute the agreements. And that still retains the obligation that I do feel upon and that I jealously and zealously guard to do our job, but also to meet the changing dynamics within that. In any event, that is the final comment, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Warden, it's finally your turn, sir.
No, that's okay. I'm always learning something. Very quickly, just a couple of comments. Page 75. There's the insertion of the word lawfully in terms of we lawfully pass policies and stuff. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that inserted in one of our policy statements. So I'm glad to see it. And maybe I missed it before. Page 79, when you talk about incentives, would be a little more comfortable if there was some kind of a scale or a limit on that. I think that's only good governance for us to do that. 2.4, 9.1, 14.1, and 15.1 center on warden's responsibilities. So I would suggest if those could be pulled out at some point and put in an orientation binder for a warden, just so they're aware of them and if there's any timelines.
Point of information, actually, Madam Chair, when the warden was suggesting pages 75, that's a recruitment policy. It is not germane to the delegation authority.
Whoops, my apologies. Sorry, you're right, my apology. So yeah, 9.1, 14.1, and 2.4 and 15.1 are part of the this one, and they can be pulled out for the orientation binder for a warden. Thank you. Sorry about that. I had my notes backwards.
See, he had to wait so long. He got confused. Way to go, Michael. Warden, you still have your hand up. Did you have anything further?
No, I just got rattled.
Okay. And I think that's a very good idea for any new warden to know what their roles and responsibilities are. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just one final comment. With the understanding from this committee, there were some slight clerical errors. I think if this committee would understand and give me some flexibility that those clerical errors be made up, be corrected before they, just make them up. We'll correct them before they are assigned to the report on county councils.
So my only question is, do we want to vote on this as it is? Because it does sound like we're recommending to county that this be approved, or do we want to amend the recommendation that says, that we've reviewed it and we'd like it to be forwarded to county council for further discussion? Go ahead.
I am certainly enamored of the latter suggestion, Madam Chair, because that is precisely my position. It is appropriate that this be forwarded to county council, but I would suggest absent an endorsement by this committee.
Agreed. All right. So, but we do have a mover and seconder for this. So can we vote on that and then bring up a new motion? Is that okay, Craig?
I'm looking at
Or do
Gwen
you-
as well. I prefer a new motion.
There's a motion on the floor.
It's on.
But it has to actually be on the floor before it could even be amended. Could we not just introduce a subsidiary motion
That's what I mean.
now
Yeah.
to amend this?
Yeah, that's
Whatever makes you
precisely what I was
happy.
talking about. No, it'd be an amending motion.
I just think that the flavor of this makes it sound like we've kind of made the decision and it goes to county council where we're saying, no, this deserves all 17 eyes on it. Go ahead.
So I would make a motion to amend the resolution.
Okay.
To read that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends that County Council receive the delegation of authority bylaw for consideration. And I don't think it is substantively changing the base of the resolution, that is to advance it to council, but it is not endorsing upon it. We are not required to suggest that we are approving it as written.
Okay, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think that either way it was going to county, so how was it going to county? In that case, the mover and seconder were I think, James?
Sorry, but it doesn't change that because I think this is a new I don't think. This is a new motion that Councillor Donahue is making. This
Oh, I
motion
thought you were amending the
but
motion.
It still is an amended motion.
Okay.
That he'll have to, that one.
So I need a mover and seconder for your amendment. Everybody got the amendment, correct? Okay, good. And you're going to move it, member from Amiston Bromley?
I will so move, yep.
Okay, and the member from Laurentian Hills is going to second it. All in favor? Perfect. So that's passed. And then do I need to vote? Yes. So we're going to vote on the original recommendation that's in your package. So I'm going, as amended. Thank you. Sorry. All in favor? Okay. And that is going forward. I'm sorry, did you have a comment? Member from Amiston, or member from North Algona, Wilberforce?
Yeah, I'm just a little confused on process. Can we just not withdraw that first motion that was moved and seconded and agree to the amended one?
It would have been simpler, though. Cleaner for the minutes, as it were. Yeah, that's right. You were too late, James. Too late. All right, so that brings us to the end of the administration report. So I'll ask for a mover and seconder to adopt the report. Moved by the member from Amiston Bromley, second by the member from Killow, Haggerty, and Richards. Anything further on this report? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, thank you, committee. Before we move on to finance, we're going to take 5. Thank you, Tyson. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Burke with the Corporate Services report for the Finance Division.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Committee. The Finance Division report begins on page 34. Information item number 1, council remuneration, is attached as Appendix FIN-1 for your reading pleasure. Appendix FIN-2 is the Treasurer's reports for the January to March 2024 period. Just a couple items to note. That it's very early in the year to make any kind of broad assumptions about where we're going, but there are a number of programs that have March 31st year ends, ministry year ends. So the first of which begins on page 44, the Enterprise Center, which is the department for our Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade grant, which is a $230,000 grant on the ministry year, so April to March. And it's been the same amount for a number of years now, with a county share of $30,000. As the grant has been static, and of course our costs have not, this program draws any excess funding it needs from what we call our old surplus funding, or a previous version of the grant that we were allowed to retain and use going forward. So in the 22 to 2024 period, which is the current period for that grant, we required $21,000 of that old surplus funding, and the balance remaining is about $80,000 in that old surplus account going forward. Next, on page 45, the OVOHT, which is our health team grant of $650,000 per year, again ended March 2024. This program ended the year $3,000 overspent, so very close for such a large grant. On a budget this size, and we'll take that extra $3,000 from the OVOHT reserve. We'll have a resolution coming forward when we get the exact amount. Page 46, Paramedic Other. There's 2 programs that have March year ends. So the VTAC program, which is $4.4 million funding per year. Well, 1 year is all we've got of history for that, and the other one is the Paramedic Long-Term Care Program, which is $2 million per year. Both ended March 2024. So the Long-Term Care Program is underspent by $170,000 in that period, and the VTAC program is underspent by $121,000. With these fundings, there is, however, an opportunity to apply an admin charge, so we can take up the rest of that unspent funding. And we would contribute that towards our community paramedic reserve, so approximately $300,000 going back into that reserve, and we would show that on the funding reports as admin fees. So we'll have that exact number and resolution at a future meeting. And then the last of the kind of major March year-end reports is the Bonisher Manor Adult Day Program, page 53. That's a $530,000 a year program. There's some client fees in there. And the expenses are only approximately $400,000. So about $100,000 will be recovered by the Ministry of Health, as there is no opportunity for admin fees, for further admin fees in that funding. Information item number 3 is a tax policy update. Attached as Appendix 3 is a letter from the Ministry of Finance announcing 2 new tax policy tools. The first is the option for a now 3rd multi-residential class, which is actually a 35% reduction off of the residential rate. So we have old multi-residential, which is a higher than residential rated tax class, new multi-residential, which is a residential rated tax class, the same as a single family house, and now an optional tax class to tax these properties as less than the residential rate. Again, this is somewhat of an odd class, is that the municipality could pick the start date that it's effective, and then building permits pulled after that date would go into the new class. So we have some options for this, where we could pick a start date. We discussed it amongst ourselves, myself and the lower tier treasurers, and somewhat of a newer process. We've referred the matter to economic development for some comments, just to help us gauge how effective this will be in our area at increasing the housing stock. And we'd like to have economic development weigh in as if this policy will do what we think it will do in increase housing stock, or if that's really not the driving factor behind the shortage in housing. The second tax policy tool is one I think myself and my peers want nothing to do with, and that's the vacant home tax, which you can see proceeding ahead in Ottawa and Toronto with limited success, I'll say. And for that reason, it's high administration, kind of low value type of a tool. So we're just suggesting we wait till all the kinks are worked out of that before we even consider it. And that's the end of information items.
Thank you. You really put a pin in that last one. So we'll go back to information item number 1, our council remuneration. Seeing none, the treasurer's report. Member from Abbotston Bromley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, just to pick up on one of the comments that Mr. Burke had made of eligibility, perhaps is stretching the use of that word, but ultimately that there could be an administrative fee assigned here. And the suggested or perhaps forecasted number that Mr. Burke is making at this time was in the order of $300K. Just as for the interest of committee, when we approved this year's budget, there was the anticipation of drawing down the community paramedic reserve, I think $182,000. So in fact, this would reverse that and augment if we are eligible to use some of those funds for that particular purpose. The only other, and Mr. Burke's advisory was well received. This is Q1. And it is incredibly difficult to establish any sort of trend line after one quarter. However, I am not nearly so circumspect as Mr. Burke. What is an interesting thing, and I don't know if Mr. Burke has had opportunity, yesterday there was just a brief discussion on resident accommodation. So there is a co-pay for residents both at the Manor and at the Lodge, and in any long-term care home for that matter. And the discussion was in yesterday's Health Committee report that the province seemed to be suggesting that we should be pleased that notwithstanding there's a 3.9% inflationary pressure, they're more than happy to provide us 2.5% increase. In any event, Mr. Burke did note that it's an ephemeral increase anyway, since it will displace funds that are provided by the province if there is an increase from the resident copay in any event. But I just noted that we were from the 2023 through 2024 at Monashire Manor, we were forecasting an increase of, I think, 37% on preferred accommodation, while at the Manor, we were actually projecting a decrease. And I wonder if Mr. Burke had opportunity to dig a little bit into that.
You were given the 24 hours notice.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the council for the period to look into it. So I think Mr. Blackmore and I did look into it, and I guess it's a question of how we came by our budget, which was built, of course, last November, and we were looking at what are the occupancy rates that we were seeing at the time and trying to extrapolate that out across this year. So it's I guess a November of last year pushed out across all of the current year. And the reason you get such swings is, so there's of course the split between preferred and basic accommodation. But in any event, we don't leave any room unfilled, so we do get preferred rooms filled with basic accommodation residents, which I think is what drives sort of that split. Is quite a variable split, and it lends to some unpredictability in our budget when we look at 1 month and extrapolate it out over 12. So again, it's possibly just more of a budgeting mechanism than anything. But again, back to your earlier comment, the piece that is retained by the county that is not absorbed into the funding formula is that preferred fees. Those are the ones we actually get to keep, and the ones that I would say matter to us. And that's the tracking that's kind of our own revenue.
Okay, thank you. As a follow-up, Madam Chair, and thank you through you to Mr. Burke. So I understand that the same accommodation may be considered both basic or preferred, dependent on the nature of the tenant, if you will, the resident of that room. So in any event, the reason that this came forward yesterday is that in the May report we received some substantial good news, if you will, that our CMI, I cannot recall, actually, Mr. Blackmore, I don't know if Mr. Blackmore will, I can't remember ever a time when we were pleasantly surprised with our CMI result. Even if we had a CMI that exceeded anticipation, it was always offset by a disappointment at the other home, and those seemed interchangeable by time. In this year, over the course of the full year, it's well over $900,000 of augmented funding that was not part of our budget, and that was from May. When at our April committee meeting, I think there were 6 line items. I have them: level of care, the health human resources is the enhanced, the 4 hours both for nursing, PSWs, and then a separate line for allied. Substantial funding coming out for minor capital, both to the lodge and to the manor, and some smaller funding for a line that was referred to as resident health and well-being. In aggregate, and of course, many of these, if not all of these, line items extend across the provincial fiscal period, so they will only have 75% applicability to 2024, and then of course, our new year is the last quarter of the province. But nonetheless, even on a 75% basis, it seems to me in some rudimentary mathematics that long-term care right now seems to have benefited from in excess of $2.5 million of enhanced funding from the time the budget was assembled and approved in January. So it is worth noting some good news when we experience good news, and it is not lost on me that I think this might be the second time since I've sat in this room that I've actually had that to give. But I think it should be noted when we are in fact receiving monies in excess of what we had budgeted for. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, there was that really dark year where they told us we were getting something, and then just before budget they clawed it back. Those were the dark years. Anything further on the treasurer's report? The member from North Algona-Wilberforce, please.
Just a comment that the member from Admiston Brumley must have specific good energy that he gets these good news reports.
Are you a little jealous? Yeah. All right, moving on, the tax policy update. Thanks for the background on this, Daniel. It really did help, and I think that just pausing for a second, because I appreciate the appendix, the letter, but the devil is always in the details. And you would hate to sort of initiate something at the local level and at county level, and then, we didn't see that clause coming. So I think it's prudent just to take a breath and see where this may or may not go. Anything further? Then we can move on to the central scheduling, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the resolution is that Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council that funds up to $40,000 be taken from the 2024 provision for unallocated funds to initiate the process of implementing central scheduling for the County of Renfrew.
Excellent, thank you. I'll ask for a mover and seconder, and then we can have some background. Moved by the member from Admiston Bromley, seconded by the member from North Algona-Wilberforce. Back to you.
Thank you. So the background on this is, as part of our strategic plan, one of the items we looked at was central procurement, was the specific resolution, but we would see this, and we, the royal we of corporate services, IT and HR, not so much Ashley, but the rest of us, would see this as really the first step in that process. And we're really quite excited about it. As you can see from our current mashup of scheduling systems, we're using about 6 different methods across our 900 to 1,000 staff. And we would really like to, as far as we can, centralize, automate, and have redundancy in that process to make it a lot easier on all of us. And with that, I think I'll leave it.
All right. Discussion, conversation, kudos. Member from Aviston Bromley, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I certainly support this initiative. While the County of Renfrew has joined the digital age, what Mr. Burke referred to as the mashup, we're still kind of using the digital vacuum tube system of sending information from one department to another. And we have experienced some of the challenges that might be introduced when we have systems that do not necessarily completely communicate with each other. And I think that there is inherent value in being able to provide solid information right across the corporate entity that is reliable and is not subject to massage to make this system talk to that system. So I'm very much in support of this. Just one question, like this is certainly worthwhile, but I question why this is laterally, why this was not considered at budget time. It certainly is an element that would have reasonably been approved of the budget, and why it is only in May of this year has something changed that has compelled this to come forward or delayed it from coming forward in the preparation of the 2024 budget.
Thank you, Chair. So through you, Chair, to Councillor Donahue. So these are one of the initiatives that we referenced when we talked about in my report about the Director of Corporate Services position and giving more latitude for the managers to come up with and initiate new initiatives. And this is one of those. So maybe not contemplated at that time to you, contemplated by staff, and now bringing it forward. Unfortunately, your point is well taken, but now is the time to suggest this.
It's as the warden mentioned, we are stealing some of the amazing initiatives and ideas that came out of the corporate service interviews.
Well, I think it's probably since you posted that Think poster on the wall. The only other question, because I looked up, so I'm kind of curious. So in our approved budget, our provision is $93,000 less than typical. 93,243, a very specific number. So our approved budget for unallocated is $206,757, and I'm assuming like 38 cents, which seems to be an incredibly specific provision. And I'm wondering what we've already attached to that. I'm wondering if I'm looking at the user, because I do not believe that we reduced our provision this year. I'm assuming that's, oh, we did reduce that? Okay.
So through you, Chair, yes, that is a very specific amount. So historically, the provision for unallocated funds has been $300,000 per year. In your budget, if we go back to the, sort of the green, orange, red level of cuts, one of the things we did was we reduced the, I'll say the available balance of the provision for unallocated down to $150,000. As you note, your budget, it has a weird odd number. And that is the amounts that we have already allocated from the provision for unallocated. And I acknowledge that that's an odd statement to make. But if you recall, the last 2 initiatives we did, which were the ESRI program for GIS and the HRIS system in human resources, had a long tail. We had done multi-year purchases of a software service, and they were funded by the modernization grant for 65% of the total cost. The remainder to come from the provision for unallocated. So that's what that difference is, the allocated 35% gap on those 2 programs that isn't funded by modernization.
The allocated of the unallocated. Anything further? I just want to, I know that this is sort of a mid-year Hail Mary, but I think that this is an excellent idea. I am very excited to see what comes out of it, the efficiencies that, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, and maybe just to be clear, the $40,000 is probably not enough to actually do this. This would be to study it in anticipation of getting it running as part of next year. This would be an extremely long process, as you can imagine. It's very complicated, and we certainly don't want to make any misstep and have anyone not get paid. So we're very careful and very much, reminded of the federal government's method of switching pay systems, and this will not be done like that.
Yeah, let's not have that happen. That would be bad.
This is what Mr. Perkins typically refers to as preliminary design work.
All right, with that, all in favor? Excellent. The report as a whole, a mover and seconder, please. Moved by the member from North Elgin-Wilberforce, second by the member from Killaloe-Hegarty-Richards. Anything further on the finance report? Seeing none, all in favor? And now we'll go to Mr. Bellamore with Human Resources, please, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to you and committee. The HR Division report begins on page 66 of your package today, and the first item of information is our recruitment efforts through career fairs. So over the last couple of months, Amanda and myself have attended career fairs on April 9th at Algonquin College, on April 24th at the Eganville Legion, and again on May 3rd in Barry's Bay at Madawaska Valley High School. The events were well attended by both employers and prospective employees in support of our strategic plan goal number 2 of workforce development. The second item of information is international recruiting. So as you may recall, we've been welcoming international recruits to the Bonachure Manor. On April 22nd, 3 more recruits joined us, and we're looking forward to another 1 or 2 arriving at the very tail end of this month. This will be in support of our 20 new recruits, which will hopefully materialize in the next few months. Again, part of strategic plan goal number 2, workforce development. Item number 3, sort of dovetailing off of Bev Zatto's retirement earlier this month, is welcoming our new employee health coordinator, Brittany Nagora. She'll be replacing Bev. Brittany's been with us on contract through the COVID pandemic, starting in 2021, and she'll be helping us to address the workload that remains, and we welcome Brittany in her new capacity. Again, welcoming new folks in the same vein. Number 4, summer students. So we are welcoming 15 new and returning summer students across the corporation, and I provided their names in here for your knowledge and where they're working. The county believes that supporting summer students is a valuable investment. We're providing these folks with practical experience, helping them bridge the gap between their education and the professional world. I'm hoping that these opportunities cultivate their essential skills such as communication, problem solving, and teamwork, and will hopefully lay the foundation for their future careers, which I hope includes municipal government either here at the county or at our lower tiers. Similarly, item number 5, co-op placements. So we hosted a co-op student in corporate services in March through Willis College in the HR payroll and accounting program. We just completed in April hosting another co-op student in corporate services through Willis College and their administrative assistant program. We are set to host a 3rd student in the coming future in community services through the Pontiac Continuing Education Center through their secretarial studies program. And although it's not listed in here, I know that Lee just sent me an email yesterday about potential other opportunities for co-op students coming as well. A similar vein, supporting co-op students helps us develop a future workforce that will benefit ourselves and the lower tier municipalities in the future. It also gives folks in the co-op streams the opportunity to test out, and these are college co-ops here, but we are working towards getting high school co-ops so that people can maybe design their field of study post-secondary so that it sets them up for a career in municipal government. Number 6 is sort of already been spoken to by the CAO, but we were pleased to host Clerks on Call for a shared training opportunity. The 2 Michelles were here with lots of experience as CAOs and clerks in Southern Ontario, and provided a great session for ourselves and lower tier municipalities that attended. on minute taking as well as parliamentary procedure. There were 30 participants in the morning session and 29 in the afternoon. This was offered to all lower tiers, and we were pleased to welcome partners from the City of Pembroke, Town of Deep River, Town of Renfrew, the Township of Adamston Bromley, Township of Laurentian Valley, and our county staff. We also conducted a post-training survey session to see if people felt it was valuable. 100% of the respondents indicated they agreed that they were satisfied with the training content, and 90% indicated they were the providers gave an engaging session. So that's positive feedback. And again, this is in line with strategic plan goal number 2, workforce development, as well as goal number 4, shared services and resources. Similarly, information item number 7 around shared services. The county HR division was retained by the Petawawa Public Library to assist with their collective negotiations, and we're pleased to say we assisted them in coming to a successful conclusion to their negotiations, including full ratification by both sides. Item number 8, employee recognition. Council will recall last year we created policy J05, our employee recognition program, and attached as Appendix HR1 is the bulletin that was announcing our annual grand prize winner for 2023. That's Denver Mullen, so congratulations to Denver at Bonashire Manor. We've also received all the nominations for Q1 2024, so stay tuned for next month where the winners will be announced. Again, for anyone watching on YouTube that's a member of county staff or even a member of county council that's interested in nominating folks, you can do so through the county's website for the Q2 awards, which are now open. And Madam Chair, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. All right, we'll go back to information item number 1, the career fairs. Number 2, international recruiting. 3, congratulations to Brittany Nagora. That's wonderful. Number 4 are the summer students. Number 5, co-op. Member from Laurentian Hills, please.
How are these co-ops, how do they come into being? Like, is this as a county, do we know how many co-op placements we are looking for, or do the students or their organization approach us?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to the councillor from Laurentian Hills. So in these instances, the organizations have approached us, and typically once we've sort of set up a relationship with one of these organizations, they come back every semester and they say, we have folks in your area that are interested in a co-op opportunity. Do you have anything available? And that's sort of how we set up the connection from there.
I'm really, really, really pleased to hear that we are going to go after high school, though. I think that co-op gives such a unique opportunity for our, next generations to actually figure out what they want to do. Maybe not their entire career, because I know that there are career changes that sort of that our generation didn't really have, but I think it's an excellent way to dip your toe in the workforce and see, even in my own business, we've had co-op students that thought they wanted to be a mechanic and they decided not, or they absolutely wanted to be a mechanic and didn't realize how much they loved it and went forward. So I think it's a great opportunity. Member from Adamston Bromley, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just and your comments kind of prompted this question. So, have we communicated to a substantial pool of post-secondary that we are receptive to these co-op placements, that we are a go-to? It's not necessarily that there would be a fit, but that we are kind of one of the perceived routes forward.
So through you, Chair, to the councillor. In certain areas we have a relationship with the University of Waterloo from their planning department. So we're actually, I think last week we welcomed a co-op placement in the planning department. There are a few, we've met with Algonquin College to work on co-op opportunities. Some of our the difficulties, it comes down to budgetary restraints in terms of how many folks you can pay. There are certain programs that are looking for paid co-ops. These co-op programs here only lasted 4 weeks in nature, and they were unpaid co-ops. So, we can kind of, as long as we can support the training internally, the sky's the limit in terms of the number of folks we can bring on board. But it's when it's the longer term, like 3-month co-ops, or 3 or 4 month, a semester in length, where folks are looking to get paid, then we have to have the budgetary considerations as well. And luckily also the high school co-ops, and we actually have one right now in Public Works. They're free as well. So it's very easy for us to take on those opportunities as long as the capacity exists with the staff to be able to provide the training and the mentorship. So those are great opportunities for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and this is actually prompted by Mr. Belmore's response. So I think that this is something, and I understand that, of course, it has to be seen through that matrix of what staff we have available to provide the mentorship, et cetera. However, particularly given the discussion earlier about recruiting, which exists right across the municipal sector, I think that this is something that should be carefully considered as to what our capacity is personnel-wise and what a budget figure that might be appropriate for us, because this is an opportunity, I think, for the County of Renfrew to lean in to establishing a larger pool of folks that would have an experience in municipal work right across the spectrum.
And I also feel, further to your comments, that it's almost Build-A-Bear. Like you're getting these candidates young. They're coming on board. They're learning not only the job but the culture of the corporation, and I think that's almost as important as the work. And we always say at our shop, there's no point in bringing a co-op student on. And yes, the high school ones are free, but there's sometimes issue with transportation. However, you don't want that co-op student to be sweeping floors all day. There's got to be a mentor or a buddy of some sort that's actually going to take these co-op students, whether they be high school or university or college, under their wing to make sure that they're actually learning on the job and not just doing scut work. So I think there's a balance there. And so even if you had willing candidates, you have to have willing hosts. And I think that's duly important. Anything further? All right, clerk's on call. Then we will move on to the, shared services and employee recognition. Congratulations to Denver. That's lovely. And now we'll move on to the juggernaut from last month. Go ahead with the recommendation, or the resolution, the recommendation, please.
Perfect, thank you. At the April 11th meeting of the Finance Administration Committee, the following resolution was tabled regarding policy E05 bereavement leave, and we were directed to correct the definition of a child. So the recommendation in front of you is that Finance Administration Committee withdraw resolution number FAC 24-04-53 and recommend to County Council the approval of the following amended corporate policies. Policy A03 recruitment, Policy A04 Ontario Human Rights Code violation, Policy A07 criminal record check for prospective employees, Policy A09 misconduct in the workplace, Policy A10 staffing, Policy A15 Code of Ethical Conduct, Policy A19 Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, Policy B03 Establishment of New Positions, Policy B10 Acting Pay, Policy E04 Vacation, Policy E05 Bereavement Leave, Policy H02 Discipline and Dismissal, Policy J01 Service Awards Program, Policy J05 Employee Recognition Program, and that County Council adopt a bylaw to amend Bylaw 6303, being a bylaw to establish human resource corporate policies and procedures for the County of Renfrew.
Thank you. I will ask for a mover and seconder to get it on the floor, please. Moved by the member from Killu, Hegarty and Richard, seconded by the member from Amherst Bromley. Do you want to go into the background again?
maybe very brief. I'll go into the background. So attached are a number of policies, the bulk of which the changes relate to the title change of the CAO, correcting it so that it reads CAO Deputy Clerk as opposed to CAO Clerk. The other policy that returning is bereavement leave. And what we did to modify this is in the 3-day leave section, we stroked out the definition of foster child, and essentially now all children are just called children in the 5-day section. Non-specific to any type of child, they'll all be a 5-day bereavement leave.
Excellent. Discussion. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Excellent. Can I have a mover and seconder for the report as a whole, please? Moved by the member from North Algona-Wilberforce, second by the member from Laurentian Hills. Anything further? All in favor? And finally, Ms. Wilson, over to you for POA.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. So the provincial offences report begins on page 133. Item number 1 is just our statistics charts that we bring to you each month. With a small change, you'll see that we have the comparison of 2023 for charges received included. Item number 2 is our quarterly statistics, and they're providing just an overview of where our courts are at, and you'll see we're well within our 6-month target. Let me just go down here. And we've had no court cancellations, which has also been great. We're back up and running to pre-COVID. Item number 3 is just an indication that we hosted a training session with the court staff, the prosecution, and judiciary, and that was just to assist new officers or anyone that needed a little refresher on the processes within the court, giving evidence, and any other questions that they might have had for judiciary and court staff. And that's about it for me.
Would have loved to have watched that mock trial, though.
Yeah, it was great. And we had a highway safety division officer come who's really great at giving evidence, and that was a nice add to the
Very
whole
cool.
day.
All right, we'll go information item number 1. Member from Aviston Bromley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just before coming to order this morning, I did have opportunity to inquire of Ms. Wilton whether typically the POA offenses, the charges received, et cetera, would be evenly distributed across the year, and there are variations in, call it the seasons or the quarters across the year. Now, I note that information item number 1, it's actually a third of the year, so it doesn't neatly fit within the Treasurer's report of earlier, and I am very pleased at April, where we are beginning to see signs where the engine seems to be sputtering to life, though I would suggest there are still 1 or 2 cylinders that are not quite firing appropriately. And the reason I bring this up is, once again, going back to the Treasurer's report on the fines, to the fine revenue, if you will, and again, with the proviso that it is not, for our purposes, year-to-date budget has simply taken 1/4 of the estimated fine revenue, and that is not precisely what our expectation would have been in the first quarter. But do keep in mind that our budget this year has anticipated a reduction in fine revenue already of 10.6% over last year. And again, I recognize that it is not precise, but the challenge is that this is projecting April is giving glimpses of maybe a return to a more typical range. But what the first quarter is showing is almost a 48% reduction in fines. I'm only comparing that on a projected over the course of the full year, so it's imprecise. But we have been seeing that, and of course, I have never perceived the fines as a source of revenue so much as the deterrent towards malfeasance of any of the offenses that we receive through POA. And once again, I'm challenged to believe that we are seeing a substantial reduction in inappropriate behaviors. So it has given me to believe that enforcement continues to be a challenge.
But you can also see where enforcement gets better as the weather gets better, but also more infractions as the weather gets better. All right, anything further on 1? Number 2, the administration. And number 3, the training. May I have a mover and seconder for the report as a whole, please? Moved by the member from Amaston Bromley, second by the member from Laurentian Hills. Anything further? And I apologize, I did call you Miss Wilson, and I know that's not your last name. Connie's eyeing me down. All in favor? Excellent. We'll go back to the agenda. Is there any new business? I see none. We don't need a closed meeting, correct?
At this time, no, Chair.
Excellent. Reminder that the date of our next meeting is Monday, June 17th. And at this time, I will call for an adjournment. Moved by the member from Laurentian Hills, second by the member from North Algona-Wilberforce. All in favor? Wonderful. We are adjourned, and we're back at 1 o'clock for County Council. Thank you.